The jungle was too quiet. Dr. Lara Miles stopped mid-step, mud sucking at her boots, and raised a hand to silence the chatter of the two surveyors trailing her. Nerithus 4 was never silent. Its canopy was usually alive with the buzz of insects, the clicking of reptilian wings, and the bone-rattling howls of predators that never care how close they came to the human domes. Tonight the air pressed down, thick and still, as though the entire ecosystem had frozen. Her heart picked up. She slid her hand to the tranq pistol, holstered at her thigh. "Doctor?" whispered Corin, the youngest of her assistants. His voice cracked, too loud in the stillness. She didn't answer. Her eyes scanned the tree line. The fog clung low, curling between roots the size of shuttle hulls. Something had silenced the jungle. Something big. Then she saw them. 2 points of reflected light. Not the amber glare of a Nerithai stalker cat. Not the green shimmer of a cliff drake. These eyes burned steady, intelligent, patient. They did not blink. Her breath caught. She knew immediately this was no natural predator. The colony had whispered of it for weeks. Patrols torn apart with surgical precision. Livestock vanishing without trace. Claw marks too symmetrical, too exact. A beast that left no scat, no den, no sound. Soldiers dismissed it as rumor. The miners called it ghost. The scientists muttered about a mutation. Ilara suspected something else. And now the answer stood before her, silent in the fog. The eyes tilted, studying her. Corin shifted nervously. "Doctor, we should go." Ilara forced herself to breathe. Slowly, back toward the ridge. "Don't run." They obeyed, retreating step by careful step. The eyes followed. A shape emerged, massive, upright, moving with a predatory grace that was wrong in its perfection. Limbs corded with muscle under scale plating. Head crowned with spines that caught faint glimmers of moonlight. It radiated purpose, as though every fiber of its being existed for the hunt. Ilara raised her pistol. She knew a tranquilizer wouldn't stop something this size, but reflex demanded it. The thing didn't flinch. It crouched low, talons curling into the mud. Corin yelped and stumbled back. And then, without warning, the predator melted into the mist. Gone. The jungle came alive again with distant clicks and hoots, as though a hell breath had been released. Back inside the dome that night, the colony leadership gathered in the central hall. The place still smelled of metal polish and recycled air, a poor mask for fear that clung to the room. Captain Harlow leaned across the table, his uniform collar unbuttoned, gray eyes hard. "You're telling me you looked straight at it and lived? Don't dress this up as one of your research fables. Doctor, I need facts." Ilara kept her voice steady. It wasn't an animal. It was watching, thinking, waiting for something. That's not behavior we've cataloged from any native predator. Thinking? Harlow scoffed. A hunter's instinct isn't thought. It's hunger. And if you survived, it wasn't interested. "It was interested," she said, "just not in feeding." The room stirred, half the faces skeptical, half uneasy. Harlow slammed a hand down. "This colony's survival doesn't hinge on what you feel. Doctor, my patrols are dying out there. If it moves, we shoot it." Ilara bristled. "And if you're wrong, if it's more than a beast, you'll provoke it into slaughtering us all. Or I'll put it down before it tears through another squad." Harlow snapped. Voices rose, arguments spilling like static. Some colonists sided with him, demanding decisive action. Others, mostly scientists and farmers, backed Ilara, arguing they couldn't treat what they didn't understand. Ilara stood. It hesitated tonight. I saw recognition in its eyes. If it was sent. Sent. Harlow cut in. By who? She hesitated. Saying aloud would only fuel accusations of paranoia. But the word pressed against her teeth anyway. By the Vathar. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the name. The reptilian dominion, whose fleets had already tested humanity at the fringes of colonized space. Predators in their own right, with little patience for negotiation. Harlow shook his head. That's speculation. Speculation that fits the facts. Ilara shot back. Too clean, too efficient. A weapon, not an accident. Harlow leaned back, folding his arms. Even if you're right, Doctor, that thing isn't here for a conversation. It's here to kill. My duty is to stop it. And mine, Elara said quietly, is to understand it before you get us all killed. Later, in her lab quarters, Elara replayed the memory of those eyes. She recorded notes, her voice low. Subject demonstrated restraint. No pursuit, no kill. Implies target-specific behavior. Possible selective programming. Strong likelihood of artificial origin, bioengineered. She paused, staring at her reflection in the viewport glass. Beyond it, the jungle glowed faintly with bioluminescence, alien and unbothered by human fears. "Why me?" she whispered. The system chimed, a message alert. She tapped the console. A single line scrolled across the screen. Another patrol lost. 6 dead. Her stomach tightened. She shut the console off. Sleep didn't come. In the silence of her quarters, she swore she could still feel eyes in the dark, watching, waiting. Morning broke, humid and gray. Elara forced herself back into the field with a smaller team. Fog still hung low, dew dripping from leaves as long as a person's arm. She crouched by the riverbank, scanning claw marks etched into the mud. Perfect arcs, identical spacing, too deliberate to be natural. She brushed the soil with gloved fingers. "Tracks again," she murmured. Her assistant frowned. Heading toward the colony perimeter, Elara stood, following the trail. Her pulse quickened with each step. She already knew where it would lead. That evening, alarms screamed through the dome. Elara sprinted to the gates with half the colony. Harlow's soldiers lined the walls, rifles raised at the darkness pressing against the perimeter lights. The jungle beyond seemed to hold its breath again. Then the beast emerged. It moved with terrifying speed, a blur of claws and sinew. Soldiers opened fire, energy bolts lighting the night. The predator weaved through, unstoppable. One man was ripped from the wall in a spray of screams. Another went down with a single slash across the chest. Elara froze in the chaos, her pistol trembling in her grip. The predator landed in the courtyard, shadow dwarfing her. Its gaze locked onto hers. She raised her weapon. Futile. The creature lunged, and then stopped, inches from her throat. Its talons hovered, trembling. Its breath washed over her face, hot and metallic. Those burning eyes bored into hers. Recognition. Again. Then, with a rumble that sounded almost like a growl of restraint, it leapt back into the shadows and was gone. The alarms wailed. Soldiers shouted. Wounded groaned. Elara stood rooted, heart pounding, pistol still aimed at the void where it had vanished. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "It was here for me." The colony's atmosphere had changed overnight. Where there was usually the hum of daily life, voices calling out across the hydro fields, the chatter of children outside the learning dome. Now there was only restraint. People kept to shadows, eyes darting toward the tree-line as if expecting it to move. The apex had been inside the perimeter, and every colonist knew it. Dr. Elara Miles walked the perimeter path with a purpose she did not fully admit to herself. She carried her field kit, the same one she used to study spores in insect colonies, but she knew she wasn't chasing data this morning. She was chasing a shadow. Her assistant, Corin, tried to keep up. "Why are we even out here?" His voice cracked. That thing ripped through soldiers like they were nothing. Elara crouched beside a set of deep tracks pressed into the damp soil. Because it came here and because it stopped. Stopped. She traced a finger across the edges of the print, noting the precision of the weight distribution. It had me in reach. It could have ended me, but it didn't. Corin swallowed hard. Maybe it just didn't feel hungry. "No," Elara said firmly. It wasn't hesitation. It was decision. He muttered something under his breath and scanned the trees nervously, one hand resting on the sidearm he'd never used outside target practice. Elara placed a sensor in the footprint, the device chirping softly as it activated. She straightened and looked at the jungle. Everything was alive with sound again. Birds shrieking, insects droning, something large crashing through foliage far away. But beneath the noise was that pressure she couldn't shake. Watching, waiting. By evening, Captain Harlow stormed into her lab. His uniform was disheveled, and his face carried the strain of command under siege. "Doctor," he snapped, "I've lost 6 men already. I can't spare more because you want to treat that monster like a research subject." Illyria didn't look away from her console. She was reviewing the colony surveillance feed. Frozen on the moment, the apex halted in front of her. Claws out, body coiled, then restraint. "Look," she said, gesturing to Frame. "It stopped. That wasn't instinct. That was intent." Harlow stepped closer, jaw tight. "Maybe it was toying with you. Cats play with prey before the kill." She turned sharply. "That wasn't play. It was recognition." His laugh was humorless. "You think the galaxy's perfect killer recognizes you?" "I think it was sent here for me," she said evenly. "That wasn't a random attack." Harlow's voice dropped. "You're suggesting it has orders?" "Yes. And what if those orders are to erase us?" Illyria held his gaze. "Then we need to understand why it hasn't carried them out." They stood in silence, tension filling the space. Finally, Harlow shook his head. You're going to get us all killed chasing meaning where there is none." He left, the lab door sliding shut with finality. Illyria stared at the frozen Frame on her console. Harlow couldn't see what she had seen in those eyes. Intelligence, conflict, choice. That night, mist rolled across the colony's outer perimeter. The lights cast pale halos that barely cut into the darkness. Illyria walked alone, recorder in hand, pistol at her hip. Every step was deliberate, her breath steady despite the pounding in her chest. The jungle answered her. A shadow separated from the tree-line, impossibly large yet silent. The apex emerged, spines glinting faintly, eyes catching the artificial glow. Illyria forced her hands to remain still. "Why me?" she asked, voice low, almost carried away by the night air. The apex stopped, head tilting. Its chest rose and fell, a low vibration rolling out. Then, with effort, a sound like broken stone grinding together formed into words. "Santi for you." Her breath caught. The recorder nearly slipped from her hand. "You can speak?" she whispered. The creature tilted its head again, eyes fixed on her. She swallowed hard. "Who sent you?" It rumbled something guttural, too twisted to understand, then repeated, more distinct. "Santi for you." The syllables were harsh, strained, but there was no mistaking them. Words. Meaning. Illyria's pulse thundered. "You spared me," she said. "Why?" The apex's jaws flexed, but no new words came. Instead, it studied her in silence, then turned back toward the trees. It dissolved into shadows, as though it had never been there. Illyria exhaled shakily, staring at the spot where it vanished. Proof. Not a beast, not just instinct, a messenger bound by orders. The council chamber the next morning was packed. Farmers, miners, engineers, all pale with fear. Harlow stood at the center, arms crossed, eyes burning with suspicion. Illyria placed a recorder on the table and played the clip. The guttural voice filled the chamber. "Sent for you." Silence followed, broken only by a woman's whisper. "If it wants her, give her over." Illyria's chest tightened, but she didn't look away. Harlow slammed a hand on the table. "We don't sacrifice our own." Then he turned to Illyria, voice sharp. "But if you've painted a target on us, then you fix it. Find out what it wants. Or I'll end this my way." "You kill it," Illyria countered. "And you kill the only link to whoever sent it. That thing is more than a weapon. It's a message. We need to hear it." The two locked eyes across the room. Finally, Harlow spoke, his words edged with warning. "You have 1 week. After that, it dies." Illyria sat alone in her quarters at night, replaying the recording until her ears rang. The voice was jagged, alien, but clear enough to haunt her. "Sent for you." She touched the glass of her viewport. Outside, the jungle shimmered faintly with bioluminescence. Every glow a reminder that something far more dangerous was out there waiting. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and sleepless. She whispered, "Then I'll make you choose." The week began with silence. Illyria threw herself into preparation. She set sensors along the perimeter, fine-tuned her recorder to capture even the faintest sounds, and studied every scrap of information the colony scanners had caught about the apex's biology. Its body emitted faint electromagnetic signatures, like interference riding on static. Not random, she realized. A pattern. Corin watched her work with restless hands. "You're acting like this thing wants to talk," he said, half-pleading. "But it's a killer. That's all it is." Ilera clipped a module into place and replied without looking up. "Patterns don't come from instinct. They come from thought, and thought can be reached." Corin muttered, or destroyed. She didn't answer. The first 3 nights brought nothing. The jungle noises pressed close, thick and alive, but the apex never appeared. By the 4th night, the colonists whispered that it had gone. Some prayed it was true. Ilera knew better. Predators didn't vanish. They waited. On the 5th night, Miss clung low to the soil, curling between the colony lights. Ilera walked to the riverbank alone. Recorder slung over her shoulder, heart steady despite the pull in her chest. She sat on a fallen log, eyes fixed on the tree lean. "Sent for me," she said aloud. "Then come." The forest answered. A ripple of silence spread as though the world itself held its breath. Then he was there, emerging without sound, massive frame gleaming faintly in the dim light. The apex stopped a few paces away, its eyes burning in the haze. Ilera forced herself to remain seated. Her hand rested on the recorder, not her weapon. "You know me," she said softly. "But I don't know you." The apex tilted its head. Its chest rattled with a low vibration before words scraped out. "Ilera." Her breath caught. Hearing her name in that voice was like being marked. "Yes, Ilera." It crouched lower, gaze never leaving her. "Ilera, a target." The word slammed into her. "Target." It gave a short, growling exhale that could have been a scent. She steadied her voice. "If I'm your target, then why didn't you finish it?" The apex shifted, claws flexing in the soil. It growled again, but this time the sound cracked, hesitant, almost pained. Finally, it rasped, "Stop, order." Ilera's pulse quickened. "You stopped yourself." Its eyes narrowed, and for the first time she sensed conflict, like tectonic plates grinding beneath the surface. "Order," it repeated, as if bound by the word. Then it struck its chest with claw, leaving a faint metallic scrape. "Program." A revelation struck her. This was no beast, no natural predator. It was engineered. Not just flesh and instinct, but design, code, command. "Who programmed you?" she pressed. The apex gave a guttural growl, words half-formed. "Creators, war sent." Her mind raced. If it was created for war, then she wasn't simply a random target. She was part of something larger, an enemy identified, or a key to a strategy she didn't yet understand. She leaned forward, keeping her tone calm. "If you were built for war, then why fight me?" Its spines rattled faintly. "Test eliminate." Then its voice dropped to a near whisper. "But choice." The word hung in the night like a spark. "Choice." Her recorder clicked softly as it captured every syllable. Ilera's chest tightened. "You can choose not to follow your orders." The apex loomed closer, close enough she could feel the heat of its body through the mist. Its eyes locked onto hers. "Choice pain." Her throat went dry. "Then choosing hurts you." It rumbled low, as though the admission itself strained its existence. Ilera whispered, "That's why you hesitated. You're caught between what you were made for and what you want." The apex didn't answer. It straightened suddenly, spines rattling in agitation, and turned toward the forest. Before vanishing into shadow, it spoke once more. Ilera survived. Then it was gone. She returned to the colony at dawn, exhausted but burning with purpose. In the council chamber, she played the recording. The guttural voice filled the room again, this time clearer, unmistakable. "Order. Program. Choice pain." Gasps rippled through the colonists. Harlow's face hardened, unreadable. "It's broken," one man muttered. "That's what she's saying. It's a machine wearing flesh." "A weapon that doubts itself," another whispered. Harlow cut through the murmurs. "You're suggesting we negotiate with it?" Ilera kept her voice steady. I'm suggesting we're facing something more than a predator. It's a soldier, and soldiers can disobey. The captain leaned forward, hands braced on the table. And if its doubt snaps, if it decides orders matter more than choice, then we're dead, Alara admitted. But right now, hesitation is the only thing keeping us alive. If we understand it, maybe we can turn hesitation into something stronger. The council broke into arguments, voices overlapping, fear turning sharp. Harlow finally silenced them with a raised hand. "You got 3 more nights," he said, voice heavy. "Prove that thing can be turned, or I end it myself." Alara nodded once. The deadline carved itself into her chest. That evening, Corin confronted her in the lab. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. "You're playing with fire," he said. "It's not hesitating out of kindness. It's hesitating because something's wrong in its code. Broken things don't stay broken forever. Sometimes they snap." Alara met his gaze. "Sometimes they break free." Corin slammed a fist against the console. "And if you're wrong," she didn't flinch, "then I'll die first. But if I'm right, we all live." He looked at her for a long moment, then turned away, muttering, "I hope you know what you're doing." So, did she? That night, Alara sat by the riverbank again. The mist curled around her boots, and the jungle whispered with life. She held the recorder loosely in her lap, her eyes scanning the tree-line. When the apex appeared, it was different. Its movements were slower, as though weighed down. Its eyes burned the same, but there was strain in them now, a flicker of something almost human. Alara stood. "You don't have to kill me," she said softly. "You can choose." The apex's jaw clenched. Its voice came out raw, distorted. "Choice pain. No freedom." Her heart clenched. She took a step closer. "Then I'll help you find it." For the first time, the apex didn't answer. It only watched her, silent, caught between duty and something greater. And in that silence, Alara felt it. The first crack in its code. 3 nights remained. The colony counted them like a ticking clock. People whispered as Alara passed. Some with wary hope, most with fear. The apex had not attacked again, but its presence pressed on them like a storm they could neither see nor escape. Captain Harlow's soldiers patrolled constantly, weapons ready, though every one of them knew firepower meant little if the creature decided to strike. Alara spent the day combing through the recordings. She slowed the guttural syllables, charted the cadence of its growls, searched for hidden structure in the distortion. What struck her most wasn't clarity, but struggle. Every word seemed torn from it, as though speaking caused something fundamental. Corin stood behind her, arms crossed, tension carved into his face. "You hear words." "I hear noise," he said. She glanced back. Noise doesn't choose when to stop. He didn't answer. That evening she walked again to the riverbank. Mist rose off the water, curling like pale smoke. She sat on the same log, recorder balanced on her knees, and whispered into the night, "You know I'm here." The jungle responded with silence. Then the air shifted, the hush of the forest falling over her like a veil. When the apex emerged, it was slower this time, deliberate, as though each step weighed double what it had before. "Alara," it rasped. She steadied her breath. "I'm listening." It crouched, claws digging into soil. "Order, eliminate." The words came jagged, almost broken. Then, with a growl that vibrated through her chest, it struck its temple with one claw. Conflict within. Her heart clenched. It was fighting itself. "You don't have to obey," she said. The apex's spines rattled violently, its body shuddering. Pain when resist. System burn. Alara leaned forward, voice firm but gentle. "Then we find another way. We change the system." The predator let out a low roar, more anguish than threat. Its claws gouged deep lines into ground. "No change. Built bound." She forced herself to stand, closing some of the distance. "You spared me because part of you wants to resist. That means choice exists. If choice exists, freedom exists." Its breath came heavy, like a furnace stoking itself. It stared at her with eyes that burned brighter than any reflection of light. Finally, it growled one word: "Teach." Alara froze. "Teach." "Teach freedom." The syllables were raw, strained, but the meaning struck her like lightning. This was not simply hesitation. It was request. Back in the colony, Harlow cornered her the moment she returned. His uniform was crisp again, but the strain in his eyes betrayed the weight of command. "You met it again," he said flatly. "Yes. And—" Elara hesitated. Revealing everything risked Harlow cutting the experiment short. But lying would be worse. "It wants to learn," she said finally. Harlow's brow furrowed. "Learn. Choice. Freedom. It's struggling against its orders, and it asked me to teach it how." The captain's face hardened. "You realize what that means? You're humanizing a weapon designed to destroy us." She met his gaze evenly. "Weapons don't ask for freedom." Harlow slammed a fist on the table. "Or it's a trap, stringing you along until you let your guard down. I gave you 1 week. Miles, don't confuse mercy with strategy." "It isn't mercy," Elara said, her voice steady. "It's change." The following night, she brought no weapons, only the recorder and a small slate where she'd drawn basic symbols. Circle for choice, cross for command, arrow for change. When the apex appeared, she laid the slate on the ground and stepped back. "Teach." It growled again, low and rough. She pointed to the circle. "Choice," she said clearly. The creature's head tilted. It repeated, "Choice." Her chest tightened with hope. She pointed to the cross. "Command." The apex's growl deepened, claws flexing. "Command." The word came like venom. Finally, she traced her finger over the arrow. "Change." Its body shuddered, spines rattling sharply. It crouched low, nearly collapsing under the weight of the word. "Change pain." Elara knelt, her voice calm. "Change is pain, but it's also growth." The apex's gaze locked on hers. For a moment, something flickered there, recognition, almost pleading. Then it roared, a sound that shook the trees and struck its chest hard. Sparks flickered faintly where claw met armor-like skin. "System reject," it bellowed. Elara didn't move, though her heart pounded. Then reject harder. The apex froze, chest heaving. Silence settled between them, broken only by its ragged breaths. Then quieter, "Elara, guide." At dawn she returned, drained but resolute. Cora met her at the lab door, eyes wide. "You're pale," he said. "What happened out there?" She brushed past him, setting the slate on the desk. The symbols were smeared from damp soil. "It asked me to guide it." Corin stared at her, as though she'd lost her mind. "Guide it? You're teaching the thing that was built to kill us." "Yes," she said simply. "And when it decides its first lesson is how to break us faster?" She met his eyes. "Then I'll already be dead. But if it truly wants freedom, then teaching it may be the only way to save us." Corin's mouth opened, then shut. He had no answer. The final night loomed. Harlow summoned her to the council chamber. The colonists gathered, tension thick as storm air. "You've had your chance," Harlow said. "What have you learned?" Elara set the slate on the table. "That it isn't just a predator. It's bound by programming, and that programming is fracturing. It wants choice. It wants freedom. And if we give it a path, it may abandon the orders that brought it here." The council erupted, some in disbelief, others in hope. Harlow silenced them with sharp gesture. His eyes locked on Elara. "So you claim to be teaching it?" "Yes. And you expect me to risk every life here on the hope that a killing machine wants to be your student?" Elara didn't flinch. "Not just mine. Humanity's." The chamber fell into heavy silence. Harlow's jaw tightened. Finally, he spoke, voice grim. "Tomorrow night is your last chance. Convince it, or I end this." That night, Elara sat again by the riverbank. The mist coiled thick, the jungle alive with unseen movement. She laid the slate on the soil, symbols redrawn. When the apex emerged, its steps were unsteady, as though each one fought against invisible chains. Its eyes locked on hers, glowing with strain. Choice, command, change. It rasped, pointing a claw at each symbol. Then, claw pressed to its chest, it growled, "Elara, guide." Her throat tightened. Then listen. Choice is power. Command is prison. Change is the way out. The apex trembled violently, spines clattering like dry bone. Sparks danced faintly across its frame. Ilera, survive, it growled, voice breaking. Ilera, teach. And for the first time, it bowed its head. The final night arrived like a verdict. Every corridor of the colony hummed with unease. Families huddled in their quarters. Children silenced by the gravity that hung over everyone. Soldiers checked and rechecked their weapons, though they knew the gesture was ritual more than preparation. Captain Harlow moved through them like a blade, sharp and unyielding, his voice steady only because it had to be. Ilera felt the weight in her chest as she stepped into the council chamber. The room was dim, only a single lamp burning, casting long shadows. Harlow stood at the far end, his hands clasped behind his back. Corin leaned against the wall, watching her with the quiet, tired look of a man torn between loyalty and fear. "You know what tonight means," Harlow said. "I do," Ilera answered. "Then understand me clearly. If you fail, I won't hesitate. The apex dies before dawn." His words were ice. Ilera simply nodded. "Then I won't fail." She returned to the riverbank, the mist thicker than ever, swallowing sound and shape. She set the slate before her, symbols drawn bold, circle, cross, arrow. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The jungle fell into silence, then broke as the apex appeared. Its frame loomed larger than ever, but it moved with an unsteady gait, as though every step costed a war. Sparks crackled faintly at the joints of its armor-like hide, and its spines rattled like teeth chattering against an unseen chill. "Ilera!" It rasped, voice fractured. She rose to meet its burning gaze. "I'm here." It staggered closer, claws digging furrows in soil. "System, demand. Kill." The word echoed like a death knell. "But choice." Her throat tightened. "And what do you choose?" The apex let out a roar that shook the ground, then slammed a claw against its own chest. Sparks burst in a shower of blue light. "System, punish." "Pain." Its voice cracked into a guttural snarl. "Teach fast." Ilera crouched quickly, pointing to the circle. "This is you. Not system. Not command. You." She jabbed her finger against the symbol, her voice hard. "Say it." Its head jerked violently, as though the word caught in its throat. "You." Then louder, "I." Ilera's breath caught. The shift was seismic. "Yes," she said fiercely. "I." The apex trembled, spines clattering uncontrollably. "I choose." For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Then, from the treeline, came a flicker of movement, a distant glint, metal, optics. Harlow soldiers. They were watching, rifles trained. Ilera felt the weight of their crosshairs, but she didn't break eye contact with the creature. "What do you choose?" she pressed. The apex crouched low, claws gouging earth, as if digging itself out of its own prison. Sparks erupted again, its frame shaking. Then the words tore free, raw and jagged. "I choose freedom." Ilera's chest surged with relief until the apex convulsed. It roared in agony, collapsing to its knees. Its body jerked violently, arcs of blue fire ripping across its skin. The system was fighting back, punishing rebellion. She rushed forward, ignoring the shouted warning from the treeline. "Stay with me. Fight it." The apex slammed its claws into ground, carving trenches, teeth bared in torment. "Ilera, pain cannot." "Yes, you can," she snapped. Her voice cut sharp, not pleading but commanding. "The system is a cage. Break it." Its eyes blazed, brighter than before. "Break, system." The roar that followed split the night. The apex drove both claws deep into its own chest, ripping through the armor plates. Sparks burst outward in violent waves, a storm of blue and white light. The air smelled of ozone and scorched earth. From the treeline, soldiers shouted. Harlow's voice rang out hard and cold. "Now! Take the shot." Ilera spun toward the shadows. "No!" Her cry echoed across the water. "Stand down." The rifles wavered, hesitation trembling through the line. She turned back to the apex. It knelt, chest open, light spilling from the wound it had carved into itself. Its voice came broken but fierce. System breaking. I free. Illyra's knees went weak. She moved closer, slow but certain. Then finish it. Not for me. For yourself. The apex raised its head. For the first time, there was no growl, no predator's hunger, only clarity. I am, it said. The words were low, steady, whole. Then, with one final wrench, it tore the last of the binding core from its chest. The device sparked, shrieked, then shattered into silence. The apex collapsed forward, the forest swallowing the sound of its fall. Illyra reached its side, heart pounding. Smoke curled from the wound, but its eyes still glowed faintly, alive. It looked at her, breaths ragged. Illyra, guide, it whispered. You're free now, she said softly. Its spines lowered, no longer rigid, but resting as though at peace. It closed its eyes, and the jungle exhaled around them. From the treeline, soldiers emerged, weapons still raised. Harlow pushed the front, his face carved in stone. You risked everything, he said, voice low. Illyra stood, facing him. And it worked. He studied the fallen apex. Then her, the silence heavy with unspoken arguments. Finally, he gestured sharply. Get it secured. Alive. The soldiers hesitated, then moved cautiously, surrounding the creature without firing. Korn approached Illyra, his expression stunned. You actually did it. She let out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. No, it did it. Back in the colony, dawn broke with pale light spilling over the walls. For the first time in days, there was no alarm, no attack, just quiet. Illyra sat at her desk, the slate before her. She traced the circle again with her fingertip. Choice. The apex's words echoed in her mind. I am. It wasn't victory. Not yet, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, she thought, were stronger than orders.